Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to another of our Webinar Wednesdays, hosted by the CSU Bakersfield Small Business Development Center. Number 43 in our series of Managing Your Business Through the Pandemic. Good afternoon, I'm Kelly Bearden. I'm going to be joined a little later by Jon Schallert, our destination business expert. But before that, we got a lot to talk about, apparently, about what's going on in pandemic relief and a lot of the programs out there. I guess there's a little bit of a disturbance happening in Washington. A little bit of a disturbance there, I guess, is pretty normal, but hopefully it doesn't slow the SBA down from their very necessary task of getting us some final rules so we know about all the information to come forward from our pandemic relief programs. So we're part of the America's SBDC. In California, we have 5 regional networks. As you know, probably we're part of the Central California Regional Network. And the Central California Regional Network includes 6 service centers. We're located in beautiful downtown Bakersfield and serve all of Kern, Inyo, and Mono counties. In addition, we have centers located in Clovis, up in Merced, Modesto, Salinas, and in San Luis Obispo. Contact your local SBDC if you have any questions, if you have any concerns, if you'd like some one-on-one consulting, maybe participate in some of our other webinars and business programs that we have, along with a lot of other services that we can provide. So, what's happening today? Wow, it's January 6th, 2021. Hello, 2021. It's a happy new year indeed, we'll see. Which, makes me ask the question, how long can you actually say Happy New Year? Maybe that'll be a poll question one of these times. How long can I get away with saying Happy New Year since we're so happy to get out of 2020? So again, Happy New Year 2021. We're going to talk today about a number of issues and what's going on. We're going to talk about a little bit of the COVID testing and information here in Kern County and some of the things going on throughout the state. We're going to talk a little bit about the California Relief Grant Program and provide you an update. I'm sure many of you have got in and found it to be a little bit of a frustrating process, and we're hoping most of that has been repaired by now. A week into the program, we'll give you some update on that. So we'll talk about stimulus, of course. We have a lot of stimulus information to come through as we've had another week to kind of dissect what was in the appropriations bill that contains the stimulus. So we'll talk about that. A little bit about PPP forgiveness and a little bit on the update. Some good measures that came out of stimulus for that. We'll talk about a big event that happened I found out about it 5 minutes after last week's webinar on December 30th, that the EIDL program, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, has been extended through 2021. We'll bring on our special guest and also answer your questions afterwards. We'll have a poll that we're going to move a little later. Usually we go to the poll now, but let's just get on to some of the things that are going on. So let's start right now with actually what's going on as far as the testing and some of the things that are happening. So a lot of things going on in Kern County, obviously, and throughout the state of California and the country that are related to COVID. We're finding that a lot of those, as my share doesn't want to share, but that's kind of common. We're finding that a lot of those are actually happening with our COVID test sites and some of the things going on there. So let's go with the free testing sites first. What we're experiencing in Kern County is that we are having high positivity rates. And there's a lot of, as a matter of fact, our actual positivity with the COVID-19 is higher than other areas in the San Joaquin Valley and even the entire Central Valley. So if you look at Kern County and compare it to other similar counties, maybe like Fresno County, which has maybe a little bit bigger population, go up to San Joaquin County and the San Joaquin Valley and also up to Sacramento County, you'll find our rates are significantly higher than those. So we're wanting to combat that with some great free testing sites. And this is kind of a good roadmap in addition to what is being done by the Latino Task Force in order to bring you testing. So again, we encourage you to, for the sake of our small businesses is to get everybody back up and going as quickly as possible. If you have symptoms, please get tested. There's plenty of free testing sites available. So please do that and look into that and research those that are available. So moving on to our COVID-19 dashboard that we've kind of ignored for the last week or two. You'll see that we've had over 72,000 cases, which represents about 8% of our population. The deaths have been relatively low, of course, unless you're impacted by any of those 518, then nothing's relatively low, but statistically it's somewhat lower. One of the interesting things we really haven't shared, but the Kern County Public Health Services Department, I think, does an excellent job on really disclosure and providing a lot of information. This application that's going to be coming up now kind of shows the Kern County area by zip code, and it shows within each specific zip code the number of cases that they've had with COVID. So knowing that the county by whole is 8%, you can go into certain zip codes and to see where COVID is more rampant than other areas of the county. So just picking a couple right now, let's go to 93311, which is the site of our university. California State University Bakersfield is there. And you'll see that looking at the population within there is what I kind of look at and take 10% of that, which is a little bit higher than our standard, which would then be 4,486, and our 3,350 cases is a little bit lower. So looking at maybe some of the other areas in 307, you'll see that it's running right around 10%. 10% is higher than the county average, but it gives you another resource and another tool to really see where this is really impacting a lot of people and even more people as we go on. So just some good information that's available for you as we kind of move on from that. And going back to good old PowerPoint, that's our COVID update for this week. First one of the year. Okay, moving on to the California Relief Grant Program, and I'm going to provide an update for you on that. Last week, many of you recall that we were able to actually, and there's the website that's available. The portal opened on December 30th, was absolutely slammed. You'll see there's a new date that's there for those of you that are applying for this program. And so now you have another week until January 13th. Originally, it was scheduled to end on Friday, the first round. The first round has about $237.5 million, of which the funding is going to be administered and comes out of the California Office of the Small Business Advocate. So the first round of $237 million, as you see, there's, depending on your gross receipts, your gross revenue, it will actually show you the grant that you can apply for. Again, we anticipate this to be highly competitive. It's not a first come, first served basis. There is a strategic scoring system. We'll go over that slightly. We don't know the entire algorithm or how these are going to be decided. Again, remember, this is through the portal that is operated by a CDFI, a Certified Development Financial Lendistry. Lendistry has done this also in the state of Pennsylvania, where they had about, if I recall, $300 million and received about $11 million in grant request. So again, a competitive process. We'll go through what makes it competitive and who can get into this. Now, we're not going to get into the whole nuts and bolts like we kind of went through last week, but we'll show you some resources where you can go to get the basic information, but we can provide you a program update today. So again, those are the gross revenues. You can get up to a $25,000 grant. It is for businesses only up to $2.5 million in annual gross receipts. So there's a number of eligibility issues that we're not going to get into, but I want to get into the scoring aspect of this because it is pretty much going to be a competitive process, maybe less competitive now because of some of the issues that people have had getting in, but it is going to be competitive. And so knowing how the grant is going to be scored might impact your decision on whether to apply or not. So the 4 determining factors on how these grants will be determined are going to be number 1, are going to be businesses impacted the most by COVID-19. Now, I don't know if these are in any particular order or what percentage is weighed against these particular 4. So I don't know, again, the algorithm or the scoring aspect of it, but these are the 4 factors. And it is going to be following California's blueprint for a safer economy and the regional stay-at-home orders that are in effect now. As you are mostly aware of, I'm sure, that the Southern California region of the state and the San Joaquin Valley are at 0% capacity as far as ICU beds, and that invokes the stay-at-home orders that are in effect at this time. So that is going to be one of the factors. And so obviously, if you're in Southern California, San Joaquin Valley, or other areas that are impacted, that will be a plus for scoring for this particular program. Also, they're going to look at businesses that are impacted the most based on gross revenue loss. And this is going to depend on a lot of businesses that have been closed and been closed for a considerable amount of time. It's going to be the impacted businesses that are also in number 3, which includes food and hospitality, lodging industries, retail, health, wellness, and personal care. And then lastly is going to be the underserved small business groups, which is defined as women-owned businesses, minority, persons of color-owned businesses, and also veteran-owned businesses where at least 51% of the business is owned and operated on a daily basis by that group. And then number 2 is going to be businesses located in low to moderate income individuals in rural communities. I would imagine they're getting the rural to moderate income determination by census tract, and it could even go that small. But those are the factors, and to be competitive in this program, you're going to need to, hit a lot of those buttons there. So that is a reminder of what's going on there. So what have we learned in the last week? We learned that the portal was pretty much slammed, and we have now expect a 2-step process, application process. The portal was really slammed. We did a little YouTube webinar for a half hour last Wednesday and went in at 10 o'clock. And during our presentation, it wasn't open. So that was a little discouraging at that time. And I know many of you have shared with us the detailed problems that you've had getting a lot of different factors. One of them being getting a password and username and other things. So let's just talk about what we've learned in the last week. The portal was slammed. There's now a 2-step application process. We're finding that I think things are running more smoothly today. And there's first, what you're going to do is you're going to apply, and then you're going to upload the required documentation later. The required documentation can go anything from tax returns to legal entity information and other things that are going to be required. It's important to note that you have, maybe if you've already got in there and had problems, you've been receiving emails from Lindustry that have kind of kept you in the loop and telling you what's going on. One of those emails will tell you that your username will remain the same. Your username is the same, but you will actually receive a new password from Lindustry. So we're encouraging people to check your spam, clutter, junk, and other sources, as well as your inbox for that email and for that new password. That will not use any of the old existing passwords that you've had, but it'll be just the new passwords. Okay, we're just going to jump over this stuff that we talked about in pretty good detail last week and provide you some resources if you need some of the preliminary information for the grant program. And this is the definition for the small businesses and the nonprofits. Remember, both small businesses and nonprofits are going to be able to apply, including 501c3s and 501c6s. Here's some more of the eligibility requirements that you see. And yeah, let's move on, get into some of the eligibility uses of funds. And there's a lot of places where you'll be able to find this information. Remember, this is round 1. There'll be a round 2. It's to be determined when that round will happen with half of the money. If you apply for round one, what you're going to find is that you're automatically submitted into round two. Then also some of the information and some of the requirements. Remember, there is a stage one and a stage two to this. You complete a grant application, and then you'll need to come back later and upload a lot of this information that is on the right, including if you're a nonprofit, a tax exempt letter from the IRS, your legal entity, as we mentioned, and some of the other uses. So here are some, and we'll try to get these in the chat box for you where you can access it. If you want to review our webinar that we did, it's about 30 minutes. It was done last week on the first phase when it first opened up. And so it's on our YouTube channel, CSUB SBDC, the same place where you can go back and get any of these webinars. There's also live daily webinars from the California SBDC network, and they did one today at 11. They did them in multiple languages and also on a daily basis throughout the holiday period. You can go to the CaliforniaReliefGrant.com website itself. Lindustry can be contacted. If you get a hold of them, you'll probably be getting a return phone call from them from an 800 number. So please, if you do go through that process to where you use the phone or use email, please remember that on the phone process, you will likely be getting a call back. And also, if you're a nonprofit and you're looking to do something from a nonprofit perspective, this was a good resource that we found just recently, put out by Cal Nonprofits. They did a webinar that's specific to those that are looking to do nonprofit work. Okay, let's move on to stimulus. Last week we went over kind of the stimulus big five, and it's grown. It's the stimulus big six this week. So it's the big six items that I think are most important out of the stimulus. And we did add one, and we added number 2 this week, whereas the PPP is now going to be open for new firms that did not apply before the October 8th shut off last year, and for 501c6s. But other than that, it's the second draw of PPP for qualified firms. It's the PPP forgiveness, the easy changes and the new expenses that you can claim, the tax deductions that came with the new package that thrilled a lot of people that had the PPP. It's really an exciting program. The events, theaters, venues, the shuttered venues, the $15 billion in grants that are available, and also the EIDL Advance being forgiven. And also we have the new EIDL Advance program, which is now being termed an EIDL grant, where we'll talk about that. In anticipation of next week's webinar, I'm anticipating it to be Stimulus Big 7. So I will be ready for that slide. There is the stimulus signed into law 10 days ago. Our focus today is going to be solely on that top line of the $325 billion. Covered a little bit of these other items last week. You can go back and get more information from a variety of different sources, including last week's webinar for if you have any interest in unemployment. Agriculture is going to be kind of a sticky issue until we get final rules, and some of the other things that affect businesses. So our $325 billion in support of small business with this package includes a second draw, $284 billion, and for new first-time filers. So people who didn't get in before or got in differently are now going to be eligible to go after that. We mentioned the closed venues, $20 billion for the EIDL grants, and $6 billion for loan payments. So let's jump into PPP2, the draw part of it, and it provides PPP loan forgiveness is one thing that it does, for actually a forgivable loan for the hardest hit industries. And we talked a little bit about this last week as far as the PPP2 second draw, 300 and fewer employees. You have to show a 25% reduction in sales in any quarter during 2020. Now, on that, I just want to say I'm getting conflicting reports that some of the information coming out is saying it's only for the first 3 quarters of 2020. But others are coming out and saying the fourth quarter is also eligible for that. This will be coming out in the final rules from SBA that we are anticipating. We are anticipating relatively soon. I'm guessing, because I like to speculate, that. I'm speculating it's going to be Friday at 5 o'clock, but who knows with what's going on with a new administration coming in, and a lot of things going on with changes at SBA, a lot of things to go over in a 5,000-page document. It could be later. We'll need some more definition on entities with ties to China that will be ineligible. We'll need more information on the ag businesses. We talked a little bit about the new entities being set up to meet our underserved communities, underserved markets, and for very small businesses as well. And also PPP2, or the second draw, as it's commonly being referred to as now, will provide the same 2.5 months from 2019 payroll like you did with your original one if you had one, and then also add some PPP expenses that are new. So we have expenses, and this can actually be used during the forgiveness process. If you were a little bit light on your forgiveness, you still needed the 60%, but some of these other expenditures can actually be now used for forgiveness. There's a lot of things going on with, are you going to need to file for forgiveness before you can get PPP second draw? And originally we had thought you would need that, but right now it seems like it's going to be virtually impossible to require that. But that again is going to come in the details when SBA provides it. 86% of people had a PPP loan of 150,000 or less, and that's going to be the one-page forgiveness that's going to probably come after a little bit later than these other rules, but we'll wait and see, as will be documentation and rules for the EIDL advance. And also it's nice that everybody likes the requirement has been for repealing the EIDL advance from the PPP forgiveness. Talked a little bit about that. And there's some really nice seasonal aspects. And we do have a lot of seasonal employers in our 3-county region, particularly in the Eastern Sierra and in Mono County. So we'll get into the seasonal aspects once they're articulated a little more clear and we have more details. But looks like seasonal employers, we're going to have some pretty fair regulations as well in dealing with this. So we have first-time borrowers that can get back in. So again, we've been closed with PPP closed in August. So the rules are going to be the same as the first round. So same rules as first round, where it can go to 10 million, up 500 employees and less, whereas we have new rules for those taking the second draw. But for those that are jumping in the first time, and those can be new businesses that are eligible, as there are new businesses that can actually jump in. We have 501c6s, your nonprofit corporations that are generally membership-based can jump in. And most existing rules are expected to remain the same for the first round borrowers. So if you had a PPP the first time, you know what I'm talking about. But the first round have been around since April 3rd of last year. So that information is out there and available. Really, personally, this is really one of my favorite things they added to the stimulus. And it really does something for the arts and for live venues and for live performances, be it cinema, theater, comedy, music, etc. Performing arts, but we can go on and on. So it really, there was threatening to be really a really significant, huge drop in infrastructure for those businesses since they were so impacted. And really, many of them were not able to participate in some of the earlier stimulus. So the 15 billion is out there, and we talked a little bit about some of the rules and regulations. What I want to do is I want to share a site that was was pointed out to me from one of our consultants recently, and or actually one of our businesses over in the Eastern Sierra, to be more correct. And so thank you, Jamie, for letting me know about this site. And it's a kind of a program that started earlier, and it's I believe a new nonprofit, and I'm not encouraging you to join, that's up to you, but a new nonprofit, the National Independent Venue Association. Apparently they were doing a Save Our Stages, to where they were trying to raise money in order to keep independent venues in business. And so they really did a really nice job of, number one, they first started by lobbying. They saw that inherently that this was an industry, a vital industry that was missing out on a lot of the earlier stimulus through the CARES Act. And so while this process went on for 5.5 months to get a second stimulus bill or a second PPP, et cetera, they were lobbying Congress in order to try to procure some things for performance venue operators and promoters. And I think they came out with there's some really good information on this website. If you're in this particular line of work, this is really stuff that you're going to really want to go to and see. They put in a lot of work and a lot of time in disqualifying a lot of businesses. And I know many of you might be sitting there thinking, okay, I have a restaurant with a bar. In a corner, I have a stage, and we have open mic performers on the weekend. And unfortunately, that is not going to be able to apply for this particular program. They have some really specific rules on what it takes to be able to apply to really kind of keep this really focused on those that were really harmed by not doing this. And it imposes a lot of rules, like a paid ticket or cover charge to attend most performances, mixing equipment, a public address and lightning rod, and other things. But, it really shows you some eligibility scenarios. And I think it's really an excellent resource for those of you that are wondering if this is an option for you other than the PPP, which, as you know, you cannot take both the PPP and also this particular program. It's one or the other. So this is something that's available and something that I hope that you will put it in the chat box, and you can go to it if it's something that interests you for grants and shuttered venues. Simplified PPP forgiveness. I was hoping to get into more on forgiveness, but right now with 86% of us waiting for a one-page application process, a simplified process, most people are saying to hold off and wait till that form comes out. So we'll have more on forgiveness. The other thing is, if you were underspent a little bit, you're going to want to look at those new expenditures to see if you can go back. And one of the requirements that we're seeing also is that if you want the second helping, the second draw of PPP, you had to spend your first round of expenses. So you can't not spend 100% of your original allocation and go back for a second helping. You're going to still need 60% of that to be payroll to get full forgiveness. And again, there'll be much more on that later, as well there'll be on when we get the final rules in order to max out your $10,000 EIDL grant, formerly called Advance. If you recall, you received probably $1,000 for each employee up to 10. And after that, what happens is that you were pretty much given the $10,000 limit. Now, if you had 2 employees and you received $2,000, it looks like this new program will be a mechanism to where you can go get an $8,000 grant through the EIDL program. And it also talks about low income, of which I think throughout the San Joaquin Valley, depending on how they break it into census tracts and some of the other aspects. But I think throughout Central California, a wide range will be able to qualify under that compared to the state average income. The taxes, of course, as mentioned last week as well, we talked a little bit about a really nice provision for business owners where they can now deduct the expenditures as tax deductible expenditures while the grant receipts and the grant revenue is not tax deductible. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. And also we had the enhancements of SBA lending to where there's going to be a lot of programs that are going to be made where SBA is investing in people they've already made loans into by offering 3 to 8 month payments like they did similarly during 2020, but moving forward in order to keep these loans from souring and employees from being laid off. Okay, John, before I introduce you, I'm going to do something I never do at this time. I'm going to do our poll because I wanted to get a little bit of content in before we ask the poll question this week. And we do have 2 poll questions. And if you have any questions over what I discussed or what Jon's about ready to discuss, please jump in the Q&A box and we will be looking at those after we get Jon's presentation. So, but first of all is our poll, and I'm going to launch the first poll. It's going to be 2 questions related to the stimulus and which recent consolidated appropriation stimulus, which is our current one, which PPP provision will likely best benefit you. And is that going to be tax? Is that going to be second draw, PPP second draw? Is it going to be the first filing where you can jump in and now file for the first time? It's going to be the simplified forgiveness, $150K and under, tax deductible PPP expenses now, additional ways to spend your PPP, or none of the above. So if you received a PPP, which provision do you like most in the new consolidated appropriation stimulus? And we'll give you a couple of minutes to jump in here and vote. And right now, it looks like people like that second draw. You know, there's nothing wrong with a good second helping, is there? But we're getting good feedback also on the simplified forgiveness, $150K and less. The tax deductible obviously is popular. And a number of you are jumping in there. So we have about 63% of you that are in. And what we're going to do is we're going to end the poll right now, this first poll, and I'll share the results with you. And the winner, PPP second draw, half of you are saying yes. Yes, give me that second draw. And then 18% simplified forgiveness for 150 and less. That's a load off of your collective minds, I'm sure, as is the tax deductibility of PPP expenses, 17%. 9% of you are going to be first-time PPP filers, and also 3% of you like the additional ways to spend your PPP. Okay, thank you. And then what we'll do is we'll open up question number 2 for today, which is somewhat related, but it is going to be, you know, what overall in the new stimulus program will best benefit you? So what overall, not the last one was specific to PPP. So is it going to be the live venue grant funding? Is it going to be the direct $600 stimulus payment? Is it going to be the EIDL grant to $10,000, the increase up to there? Is it going to be your PPP second draw? And or is it going to be SBA making loan payments for you if you have an existing SBA loan, or unemployment provisions for you self-employed independent contractors? So jumping right in, right along, got about 40% of you voted. It's probably no shock, but the same leader is the winner of the last poll, the second draw for harder hit businesses. But some other things coming in that are providing interest. So we'll give you another minute or two, or moment or two. I won't give you a whole minute, but okay, that's it. 57% of you have voted. Let's end the poll. And ending the poll shows us that, yes, 51% of you are back for that second draw. In addition, we have over a quarter of you that are looking forward to the new EIDL grant being extended up to a $10,000 maximum. We have additionally 8% of you wanting the self-employment provisions, and the direct stimulus payment is a good thing. Only 1% after that wonderful website I found, only 1% are out there for the live venue grant funding. I'm crushed, really crushed here. And 5% of you like the fact that SBA is going to continue to make your SBA loan payment. And who wouldn't love that? Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for jumping in. Now I get to introduce our guest speaker. And our guest speaker is going to be Jon Schallert. And Jon is a principal, Schallert Group, a firm he founded in 1996. He developed a 14-step process for destination business strategies. And, you know, one thing, as I give a little commentary, is we haven't talked enough about is opportunities that are arising during the pandemic and things that you can do to reinvent your business. And Jon is here to help us with that. With his 30 years of consulting small businesses and over 500 communities. And it's really a kind of a unique perspective to what we see strategy and small business consulting. Jon kind of mastered his trade at large companies. Doing so, he was able to actually work through KitchenAid and Hallmark cards and a lot of other things, applied that to small businesses. Jon has worked with many rural, remote, and economic challenged areas, developed his trademarked destination business process that we'll be talking a lot about in the next month. So Jon resides in Longmont, Colorado. Sounds like a destination to me. Jon, thank you. Take it away.
Kelly, thanks very much. I'm going to jump over to my screen here so everybody can see this. You guys should be seeing a Destination University logo on the screen, and hopefully you're looking at that. So Kelly, thank you for the opportunity to be able to talk to the group today. When I was listening to the introduction, I was thinking back, 1996, I joined Hallmark Cards, that's when I started my company. It was 1986, and I was just in my 30s, late 20s actually. And I joined Hallmark Cards. I had no retail experience at all, but they really liked that. They liked that I wasn't part of the corporate structure in Kansas City. So I was always out working with independent retailers, and what I happened to be is very outspoken. I would tell people that I didn't understand things, I didn't get it, I didn't think their things made sense. And they said, we're going to put you with 3 other people in charge of a program called our Destination Store Rollout. How do you make a business so compellingly different that it pulls consumers from everywhere? And they wanted to apply it to their card shop channel. So I was with Hallmark for 10 years and rolled out this new program for them. And it was very successful with a bunch of their card shops. And then after 10 years, and I was a savvy, smart 38-year-old. And I said, I'm going to go out on my own and start my own consulting firm. And I thought I'd be consulting with independent retailers like Hallmark stores and places like that. Well, that didn't happen. In fact, for about 2 years, I didn't really make any money at all. And then there was I was at a big conference. And I spoke about my destination experience and what I knew at Hallmark Cards. And really, I was just regurgitating a lot of the Hallmark stuff. It really wasn't anything that it was just so basic stuff. But what would happen is the first people that really embraced my ideas were downtown programs around the country, the Main Street programs, International Downtown Association, different places. And they would bring me into different communities. Like this is Madison, Indiana, Southern Indiana. And I had a 90-minute workshop. And I would do a 90-minute workshop and then be done. I'd be done, start at 8 o'clock, be done by 9:30 in the morning. And they'd say, well, what else can you help us with? And I said, well, I can help businesses. So they would take me door to door. They would take me literally to 10 to 15 businesses in each community. And so here, literally in downtown Madison, Indiana, which if you ever get a chance to go there is quite a cool artistic city right on the Ohio River. They would walk me into places sight unseen. Now, sometimes I was in little places and sometimes I was in places that were bigger cities. Like here, I'm in downtown Chicago. I was in downtown Chicago. Here, I'm helping a business owner with his front windows. And so it was really whatever they needed, I was trying to advise them on. But, of course, you can, when you've worked with Hallmark card shops and florists and places like that, a lot of these places I didn't know anything about. So I would ask questions. I'd say, what are you working on? And, what can I help you with? And if I didn't know, I'd write down the questions I had and I'd go back and I'd report back to them. And what started to happen is I would have entire states would bring me in for 5-city and 5-day tours. I'd be in Mississippi and the next week I'd be in Oregon and then I'd be in New Hampshire and then I'd be in Florida, and 5 cities in 5 days. And so the very first year I spoke in 87 different cities and visited 10 to 15 businesses in each city. Now here, I'm in little Madison, Indiana, small community, and then downtown Chicago. I mean, they're totally different environments, totally different businesses. This guy in downtown Chicago's got lots of economic opportunity. He's got high rent. He's got lots of people around him. Not so in Madison, Indiana. But the difference is that here, you don't have very many people. You're trying to pull people to you. You have to be a destination. Here, you've got tons of competition. You've got people and competitors all around you. You still have to be a destination. So as I started going around the country, I started meeting business owners like these two. This is Marilyn and John Thomas in a little town called Fredericksburg, Texas. Here's the demographics of Fredericksburg, Texas, just so you can see it. 8,900 people in the town, not a wealthy place. Median household income, $43,000. per family. And when you went to their place, they had a business there called the Wild Seed Farm Company. Turns out they're the largest producer of wildflower seeds in North America. They have a 13,000 square foot entryway when you walk in. I asked Marilyn and John, I said, you must have been, very experienced retailers. They said, no, we're fifth generation rice farmers. We didn't know anything about this. It turns out, they had developed this business with multiple failures. And as I started to talk to them, I'd ask them these different questions, like, how did you do this? And how did you get to this certain sales level? And I would always ask them their sales level, but in case most of the time the business owners didn't trust me, they didn't know me well enough. But John did tell me this. He said, yeah, we did pretty well, even though our town is only 8,900 people. Last year, we ran 375,000 people through our doors. 375,000 people through their doors is more than some of our national parks. And so when you start looking at these businesses, I would interview these people. I used to carry a cassette recorder with blank cassette tapes, and I would record these people and take it back, bring it back to my wife. And she had a secretarial firm. She'd have one of her secretaries transcribe everything for me, and I would study these different interviews. I got to show you this business. This is a business in a little town called Hartville, Ohio, 2,944 people. And I was at a hardware convention. I speak at national conferences, different association conferences. I was at a hardware convention, and somebody said, hey, have you ever met Howard Miller, the owner of the Hartville hardware store? I said, I haven't. I've never heard of, I don't know where that is. Well, it's in Hartville, Ohio. It's just a little town. Well, I didn't know it was 2,900 people. But come to find out, the Hartville hardware store is America's and the world's largest hardware store. 305,000 square feet. 305,000 square feet. To give you an idea how big that is, I mean, it's huge. This is looking out of the CEO's window, out of Howard Miller's window. And if you have a family-owned business, you'll understand his challenge. He has 18 family members, sisters, brothers, nephews, nieces, uncles, brother-in-laws, sister-in-laws, all of them, grandkids, all working in this business. In fact, I looked out of his window, 305,000 square feet, by the way, if you can't comprehend how big that is. That's a Home Depot and a Lowe's and a football field all under one roof. So it's huge in a town of less than 3,000. If you can look in the back there, you see a full-size house. They built a full-size house inside their hardware store so people could see how things look. This is what it looks like from the sky. Now, I ended up working with these guys and helping them. They were multi-family, different venues. In the back, they've got a thing called the Hartville Marketplace. It's a flea market, kind of a enclosed mall with 78 different vendors that brings in 1 million people. They've got an Amish restaurant on to the right. In the back, you see a building back there. They make salad dressing back there. LeBron James, his favorite salad dressing is their salad dressing, a poppy seed dressing that they ship out to the Lakers so that LeBron never goes without his dressing. But how did this business get built? I figured it started as a small hardware store and grew to a big one. No, it started as a livestock auction house that they grew to quite a success. And then they put a restaurant next to the livestock auction house. Then the health department shut down the restaurant because it was next to a livestock auction house. And then they had to separate. And eventually they bought someone's business. And the Howard Miller's father came out and bought 300 acres outside of town and said, sometime we're going to put all the businesses out here. And that's what they've got here now. A varying degree of success. They've got an Amish restaurant that's really not that good. I even told them, and they all admitted that it's mushy vegetables and chicken. But, they have things to work on like everybody else. But how did this happen? How is this possible that a business like that exists? I have to show you this business. So I was at Hallmark Cards for 10 years, and then I go out on my own. This is the very first place I ever spoke. Now, all of you probably have heard the name Amelia Earhart. Amelia Earhart was the famous aviator, female aviator, and she came from this little town called Atchison, Kansas. Now, Atchison, Kansas has a population of about 10,000 people, and I first spoke there. Very first town I ever spoke in. I had 13 people in my audience at a Chamber of Commerce event. And I was so excited about speaking there. I walked up the hill and took a picture looking down. But I'm going to tell you about the business that's on the far right side of the screen that you see there, a little 2-story kind of gray building. And this is not a great digital shot because digital cameras really weren't that great back then. This is probably the highest resolution I could have got. But this was a business that a business owner, after I did my little 90-minute workshop, very first city I'm ever in, getting ready to go around and see the businesses, she comes up to me and says, "My name's Mary Carol Garrity." I still remember. She's a little 5'2" and very feisty. She said, "I'm Mary Carol Garrity and I own a business called Nell Hills. You might have heard of it." I said, "No, I've never heard of it. I don't even know what it is. It doesn't make any sense." She said, "Well, my grandmother was named Nell Hill and my father was a retailer and I'm a retailer and we own this business." Now here's Atchison's demographics: 10,925 people, not a wealthy place. Look at the median household income. It's about 45 minutes northwest of Kansas City, all by 2-lane road, very agricultural. And this was her building. I said to her, "Wow, that's really an ugly building you've got there." She said, "Well, we can't do anything to the outside because we've got the city of Atchison put concrete awnings on our buildings, back in the 60s, and they don't want to tear them off. And you can't see it, but they made the street right in front of it a walking mall with Amelia Earhart statues." But Mary Carol said, "I have a destination, and why don't you come see it?" She walks me through her building, and we went up these little teeny stairs, and there were all these little cut-up rooms. There were furniture and home decor and gifts and fabric and draperies and pillows and gift items, things you'd see in a lot of gifty home decor stores. And we came back downstairs. Now this was right when I started my company in 96. And I said to her, "Do you mind telling me what kind of sales volume you do in this town?" And I'm expecting maybe she's doing 150,000, 200,000, maybe 300,000 if she's, really lucky. She said, "Well, yeah, we did pretty well last year. We did $2.9 million." Now, this is in a town of 10,000 people. It's not a wealthy place. I said, "What, are you selling everything to everybody in town?" She goes, "Oh, no, I hardly sell anything to anybody in town. I pull people from Omaha and Des Moines and Kansas City and Chicago and Dallas." She starts naming off places all over the Midwest and the South. So how did you create this? How did you create this business? She goes, "Oh, we just got lucky." I said, "Well, it must have been more than just luck." She said, "Well, we were blessed." I said, "I think it's probably more than that too, but you got to have both those things on your side." Well, it took me several years of kind of studying Mary Carol and coming back and interviewing her and learning about a little bit more. But a year and a half later, I came back. She allowed me to do a training, which I remember it really wasn't that spectacular. I certainly wasn't the reason her sales were going up, but she had it up to 4.2 million. And eventually she got this business up to $6 million in this town, in this building, and then shuttered it, then closed it down. Lots a story there. She opened up another business that was doing tens and tens of millions of dollars. And I said to her, "Why didn't you keep this open? Why didn't you sell it to somebody?" She said, "Oh, I'm just a one-store gal." Yeah, lots of great stories. But in this process of me interviewing Mary Carol Garrity and businesses like John and Marilyn Thomas and going to these different places like Howard Miller's Hartville Hardware Store, I started to figure out that there's actually a process. Now, I've never taken a marketing class in my life, and I don't have a business degree. I was actually a high school English teacher that taught health, PE, drama, girls basketball, track, and football. But which really makes me qualified to be on this webinar. But what I am really good at is I ask really good questions. I keep really good notes. I record things. I remember. I have a good memory, great memory, and I see patterns. I see great patterns. So it took me about 4 years of visiting literally over 1,000 businesses a year, 87 cities in my first year, 83 cities my second year, 10 to 15 businesses in each one of those cities. And I started to happen again and again where business owners, I'd walk into somebody's place where these businesses shouldn't exist. And they'd say, "This is really great. You're here to help me, but I don't need your help. I'm doing $8 million in this town of West Virginia. And I'm doing this in downtown Oakland," when I spoke in downtown Oakland. And so they would tell me these different successes. And a lot of times they'd say, "Well, you can't tell anybody," and I'd ask them how they did it. And sometimes they didn't even know. They knew maybe one thing they did or something like that. But I realized there's actually a process. I studied this and I realized that these businesses were actually being created by a process, a business differentiation process. And that's what I teach. It took me about 4 years to realize this. And now this is what I teach. I teach a 14-step process that makes your business a destination. If you do this, what happens is consumers, whether you're in an urban environment or a rural environment, in a city, a town, it doesn't matter where, downtown, doesn't matter where you are. If you do this, a consumer says, "I'm going to that place." Now, this is critical right now with this pandemic. This has been, my business totally changed in March, just like everybody else's last year, and everything of mine's gone virtual. But a destination business, when the consumers aren't spending, and when consumers have cut down their traffic visits, and consumers are, stranded at home, being a destination is exactly what you have to be. When consumers are limiting their purchases, you've got to be the place that consumer says, that's the only place I'm buying. I'm going there. I'm not going to Amazon. I'm not going to the big box store. I'm buying with you. Now, it doesn't have to be. Hallmark cards, started out by it being retail oriented, but it doesn't have to be retail oriented. It could be any kind of business, a service business, professional practice, retail store, a restaurant, a museum, if you're trying to attract consumer, you can use this strategy. So up until the pandemic, we were teaching this in our historic building in downtown Longmont, Colorado, my destination boot camp, a 3-day class. And we'd feed people, we'd give them food and treats, and we'd put 26 people in the room. And it was a great class, great class. We've been doing these since 2003. And now, of course, we're doing everything virtual. We also have a program where communities would send at least a group of 7 people from the same community to our boot camp, and everyone would take the class together. That was called our Community Reinvention Program. All those programs are now online. So I'm doing everything online, just like everybody else. Here's our last destination boot camp that we did at the end of last year. And we've had people who've come in person to our boot camp from all around the globe, Australia, New Zealand, Newfoundland. But now we're doing it online, which has the same reach, even more reach and less expenses. So when the pandemic shut down, I want to give you guys a website. Kelly's been great about the website he gave, which I thought was a great resource. But we created a website called successfulindependentbusiness.com. And we've got an area called the trending area on the right side of the screen there. And what I do is, a lot of the businesses that I know of are really busy. They're overwhelmed. They're stressed. They're trying to figure out all these different things to stay open. And, it's not every business that's been hugely impacted by the pandemic. That, many have, but, my butcher, my meat market near me, they haven't been impacted at all. He's up 45% and he doesn't do anything. People are just hoarding food, so not everybody's been that impacted. But what we created here is a portal where people can go and get quick answers. For example, if you go to the trending section, I try to create and give people what I call silver bullets. Simple solutions, where that if you use the solution, you'll pull in more customer traffic, you'll increase your sales, you'll drive your revenue, you'll increase your profit margin, things like that. If you want to see the best COVID-19 takeout restaurant video of all time, it's 40 seconds long. It won't take you much time. Go to Successful Independent Business and click on the right side of the page under the trending section. This business went viral to 27,000 people with no boosting of a post. And it costs $0 to generate. This person, I interviewed the person who created the video. She gave me a 17-minute video. So you can sit there and listen to this and you can figure out how to create your own viral video. She's fascinating. She's brilliant. And this business, in about 2 hours, they created this viral video that really skyrocketed their business. So I try to find things like that people can go and learn from. And we're going to take some questions here, but I want to make sure that if any of you want your questions answered, or you have issues or concerns or questions or any of that, here's my personal email address, and I respond to everything. Jon Schallert, js@jonschallert.com. And you can also go look at our Destination Bootcamp website if you want to, learn more about that. So that's fast. And, I wanted to make sure that we get time for questions and everything. And I don't know if these questions, if you're going to ask me PPP and EIDL questions, that won't be, I don't know that stuff. I have to go to somebody like Kelly to help me. Somebody said they can't find my website. Go to JONSCHALLERT.com, JonSchallert.com, or successfulindependent.com. Kelly, you coming back? We're going to do some questions.
Yeah, here I am. And they probably forgot to put that C after the S in your last name. That's my guess.
Or they might have done JOHN. It's not. It's JON. So
Two common ways of doing that.
yeah.
Hey, I have a couple questions for you,
Yeah.
and then I want to say something. So, do you ever get a business that wants to be a destination that can't become one?
That does happen. Now, this process is not a complicated process, because consumers really aren't that complicated to get them to choose you. You just have to create points of difference that are extraordinarily above average that consumers remember you. One of the key things today is being memorable. But what often happens is you get businesses that don't want to change. They don't want to adapt. I'm not making businesses change everything they do. What they're doing is they're actually repositioning parts of their business so a consumer sees it differently. But so it's a couple of things that stop businesses from becoming destinations is the owner. The owner can screw it up big time if they aren't willing to look at some of these different ideas. And I always tell people, Kelly, this is not something I invented. This is something that I'm just a really good listener. And I interviewed over 10,000 business owners, and there were a lot of them that just shared their secrets. And I realized, oh, you can do this all the time. And so it's not a difficult process. It's not something that can happen overnight. You've got to put several things into place. The other thing that happens when a business does not become a destination is all of their points of differences are all below average. So I've only had one business owner actually cry at one of my classes, and she came up to me. She had a great gardening gift shop, and she burst into tears because there's actually 24 different points of difference that you can create that consumers bond to, not counting price and selection. And she had gone through my list of 24 things and came back to me and said, I am below average or average in every category. And I said, well, now you know what you need to do, and she goes, I don't want to. I hate my business. I don't like it. I've never liked it. My husband made me do it. And so yeah, you're not going to be a destination then. You're not, if all your points of difference are average or below average, it's going to be really tough. You're going to then be a local business that probably subsists on a lower level. And that's one of the things that I see happening that's really, really troubling and sad right now, is that there's some businesses right now that are wondering why consumers are coming to them. And one of the reasons is that many of them aren't destinations. Many of them aren't distinctly different, that consumers are saying, that's the place for me. Excuse me.
Hey, John, we have this community, Eastern Kern County, Ridgecrest. And Ridgecrest sits right off the highway, just a few miles from a large population base in Southern California that drives up to the Mammoth Lakes area to go skiing. And I remember they've always asked me about, as a community, what could they do to become a destination? And now I think I finally might get an answer for them. What could a community do to become a destination?
Well, there's lots of consultants out there that consult on what they call destination marketing, and they will go to a community and they'll create a branding program and signage and graphics and things like that. So my point of view is really different. My point of view is you teach the individual businesses that are right there, that are already there. You teach the individual businesses how to be so different that consumers come to them like magnets. Because what happens is when you teach these businesses how to become destinations, not only do they pull consumers from a greater distance, and the reason that's important is because consumers from a greater distance always disproportionately spend more money. They always will purchase more than a local. And that's just because they come from a greater distance. They want to make their shopping trip or their buying trip worthwhile. They'll spend more on an individual average transaction basis. But what also happens is when you raise your points of difference and you really start focusing on your uniqueness, what makes you one of a kind, what happens is the locals appreciate you more. So what I do is my community reinvention program says, look, there's lots of people who could redo your signage and come up with a brand and a slogan and a tagline and those things. But if you also teach 7 or 10 or 15 or 20 of your businesses all how to use these principles, you're going to reinvent the community, and you're going to do it at a much cheaper cost. And you won't be wasting money on just, kind of taglines that people don't really respond to. So that's what.
Hey, do these techniques work for restaurants?
Retail stores, restaurants, service businesses, professional practice, restaurants, Kelly, are the easiest ones. Restaurants are the easiest ones to make destinations. And that's why it kills me when I get restaurant owners who will come to me and say, you know, I can't do anything. And yet I know they're restaurant owners right now that have pivoted and they've changed and they've altered their scope of their business, their marketing, and their business model. And but yeah, restaurants are the simplest businesses to make destinations. Somebody asked, how do you make a medical clinic a destination? Well, you know, medical clinics are, you know, well, there's multiple points. They can't use all the techniques that a restaurant or a retail store would use, but they can use different techniques that those places can't. So, you know, one of the things that one of the 24 things that people radiate to is a person who's elevated themselves. Oftentimes what I find when it comes to the medical practices, chiropractors, you know, any type of person, you know, podiatrists, all these different people, anesthesiologists, people who are really, really good in those fields often don't want to actually tell their story very well. So what happens is sometimes when you get with those people, one of the things you get to delve into is how do you tell your story in a better way than just a chronological listing of the things you've done. And so, and then you have to know that when consumers enter a business, we know that 70% of the time they're going to glance to their right when they come in. There's a wall called the dominant wall. It's the first thing they anchor to. You've got to develop a thing that I call the unique positioning statement. What makes your business totally unlike anybody else's in your industry? So you've got to front load some of this work to set up the experience when a consumer comes in and goes, I love these guys. And as soon as that happens, as soon as you've hit them with that emotion, that's when it can really be. That's when the bonding takes place.
Well, that's a lot better answer than I had. I had how to make a medical clinic a destination at an emergency room.
Well, that would work too. How can I use your product as a destination for city or government entities? Look, Lynette, I'm not understanding that one. In fact, if you want to, you can unmute yourself and just ask the question. But if you are after consumer attention, if you're after consumers to generate revenue with you, you can use these tools. What often happens is the tools. Well, I'll kind of back up. A lot of these places that I learned about, Kelly, where it became destinations were in sometimes small towns, sometimes really demographically challenged areas, poor population, low income, all those things. And so, you know, they have that New York saying that if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere in New York. That I just think that's a big lie. If you can create a $6 million business in Atchison, Kansas, you can make it anywhere. So it's, you know, these businesses that are in sometimes these really small, disadvantageous places, or very overpopulated places where they're really fighting for attention. Those are sometimes the businesses that work the hardest and do all the basic things they have to do. So like for example, there's a big restaurant chain out here in Colorado that is always right now discounting their gift cards. And I get they're discounting their gift cards by 20%. And I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to generate revenue. And that is one way of doing it. But of course, when the time comes that you go and redeem those gift cards, I mean, most restaurants aren't operating at that kind of 20% profit. So if everybody redeems their cards, you're going to be in trouble. But the problem with those things is, and I've been to a bunch of these restaurants in this restaurant chain, never once when I went into that restaurant did anybody ask me for, hey, you want to be on our newsletter list? Hey, you give us your email address and we'll give you a special discount and we'll connect with you through Twitter or, you know, all the different ways you could do that these days. And what a lot of businesses don't understand is it takes 10 to 16 times the money in your marketing and advertising to bring somebody new into your business. So you capture somebody's name one time, an email address one time, you've got a 1/10 to 1/16 cost to bring that person back. So this is a restaurant chain that is big, very skilled. Their restaurant owners won the James Beard Award for something like this, but obviously didn't know this simple technique. if I'm in the middle of Atchison, Kansas, or in the middle of New Hampshire, I use that technique. I capture and connect with consumers and invite them back, figure out how to bring them back for repeat visits.
Hey, John, you're coming back to California virtually with a little program you're doing for us. Give us some details.
Yeah, so Kelly, this is a really great program. The Central California SBDC group reached out to me and said, "Hey, can you do something for us? We want a customized presentation on your destination process, and we want it to be done virtually." And they kind of gave me some parameters, and I bounced and said, "I think these are the critical things that people need to know now during this pandemic." And they said, "That's great. That's great." So in about, 15 days, 14 days, we're going to do this. It's going to be on the 19th, 20th, and 21st, and the 26th, 27th, and 28th. It's 3 nights one week, 3 nights the second week, from 5:30 to 8 o'clock p.m. California time. And I'm going to take you through creating a destination business using skills that you can apply in your California businesses. And so this is not, you don't have to come to Colorado for 3 days with me. You can do it right from your office, your home, wherever you are, via Zoom, thanks to your SBDC of Central California. And Kelly, I don't know if you know this. This is the first SBDC group in the country, and I've worked with a ton of them, that has reached out to me during this pandemic and said, design something for us that's going to help our people. So yeah, this is a big, the website's there. I think we've got a limited number of seats that are going to be available, but it's going to be me teaching it for 3 nights one week and 3 nights the next week. And then we've got 2 follow-up. We've got 2 follow-up sessions, 1 session a month after the class is done, where we all get back together, and then another one 2 months after, where we all get back together. So love to have you guys who are on the call. If you have an interest or you have a friend who needs this kind of help, put them in touch with us. But yeah, just a couple of weeks away. I'm excited to be able to present this.
Yeah, and we'll be talking more about that. And I know I will be in attendance, even though there are limited seats, and that when you register, it doesn't guarantee attendance because it is going to be oversold. Okay, well, that's great. And I learned all that from that guy that I think Fredericksburg, Texas was named after, Rick Leibowitz, perhaps. But anyway, so thanks for being with us, John. Really appreciate it. You can stick around. We might get another couple of questions. I'm going to jump into the PPP idle questions and a lot of the pandemic stuff, and start right up here at the top of the chat, and then we'll hit the Q&A section and get through all your questions and then get out of here.
That sounds great.
So
Kelly, thanks everybody for being with me, and Kelly, thanks for inviting me on.
Great to have you, John, and we'll be talking about this program in the next couple of weeks as well.
Sounds great.
So here's a client that had something, whereas or one of our attendees, where they actually went into their PPP account and everything had disappeared, and they were on their online account through B of A, and wondering if anybody else had that without any confirmation, assuming that maybe forgiveness was granted, and it just shows everything gone as far as, well, if you had a loan with them and it's gone in your balance, I think you would be safe to assume that perhaps it's forgiveness, but I would probably want a little bit more information. So if you filed the forgiveness route, maybe check into it again. But if anybody else has heard anything, throw something in the chat. If you've worked with B of A and all of a sudden your online accounts was gone. We also have a number of our links that we talked about today in the chat where you can grab those if you would like. Number of those. So those are all available to you. Do you think there'll be another Kern Small Business Recovers program using PPP funds? And that was the Kern Recovers program, small business program, $30 million, very successful. It's hard to say. We'll be talking soon to county officials and see what their thought process is on that. I know early on they were hoping to avoid some really high expenses in dealing with hospitalization and maybe a remote hospital, and there might be some funds that were left over from that. But that was months ago, so I don't know exactly where that stands at this point. My guess is that my guess would be no, but I would say that there was a possibility and there was discussion about potentially doing that. So hopefully. Back still on Kern Recovers, is there any word about Kern Recovers loan being afforded the same tax treatment as PPP forgivable loans? They're both CARES Act funding, as is the BCARES program and a number of other small local, larger local, and even statewide programs now with the state program. So I would assume there's going to have to be a ruling on that eventually. I don't believe there is one on it yet. If I were to guess, since it was legislation that actually enacted the tax deductible nature and the full forgiveness nature of the PPP from an income tax perspective, my assumption is until you receive something otherwise to that on other CARES Act funding, and this is all across the country. There's a lot of different jurisdictions that did these types of programs, so I would expect some type of guidance to be coming sometime down the road. Do temporary employee costs count toward a non-payroll cost for PPP loan forgiveness? That is a really good question. So, technically your non-employee, your non-payroll costs have been facilities and utilities, and a temporary employee would not count toward that. And it sounds like though you have reached your 60%, I would guess that it would probably be okay for forgiveness, but this is something your bank is going to have to, or your lender is going to have to answer for you. We do not know yet which banks are going to be in on the second round of PPP. They're waiting the final rules just like we are. And when they get them, they will kind of craft that decision themselves. Recall there were almost 5,500 lenders across the country. And there were only about 1,600 SBA lenders to begin with when the program started. So I imagine some of those will drop off. Some of them could even jump on. So we'll have to wait and see which individual banks and their decision on that. It was probably made a little bit easier with the forgiveness for 150,000 and less, which will greatly ease that particular process for banks and other lenders. My bank will not allow me to apply for forgiveness, stating they don't have the forms finalized yet. Will this affect my status to receive round two? I do not believe so, just because of this very reason. And I think when you have some of the world's or some of the nation's largest banks, well, they're world's largest banks too, Chase, Wells Fargo, and B of A, that have all kind of started the process a little later than a lot of the other lenders that we've seen. I think that it's going to be very difficult for them to exclude the forgiveness aspect. Now, there has to be a condition, I believe, that will be coming, and we'll know what the final rules is, that you will have to have all of your funds spent. We will do a e-blast this week. Got to slow down a little bit the holidays the last couple of weeks, but it will include the webinar recording and also the links that we talked about. If the EIDL grant is not excluded for PPP forgiveness, what are the tax consequences? Is the EIDL grant taxable income? Very good question. One that I haven't considered, one I haven't been asked before, and really is relatively new now that that has become a forgivable grant as well. So, there will be guidance on that either from the SBA or the IRS, I would imagine, because of the fact that there's about $20 billion running around in EIDL grants or EIDL advances from the CARES Act. So that is something that will have to be addressed. Right now, I do not believe we have an answer on that. Any info on when the second PPP will be available? Well, we're going to need final rules from SBA. And as I said, I hope that's Friday, just because I kind of had something fun planned this weekend. So Friday at 5 is my guess, and it could be next week. The legislation said 10 days after it was signed into law, which was 10 days ago. But just really everything that's going on and everything that's going on in this world, I have no idea. Have you heard of any news on the Barstool Fund? We'll talk a little bit about the Barstool Fund next week. I heard a little bit about it, but I don't know enough to comment on it right now. And in fact, I heard about it just this morning. So I'm going to research that and come back with a more complete answer for you next week. I received from the SBA what I thought was PPP only to find out that it was an EIDL loan. Any advice? Okay, so let me go back through that. You received from SBA, you thought you were receiving a PPP, but you received an EIDL loan. So you thought you were getting the forgivable, you didn't get the forgivable. Was it the EIDL loan or an EIDL grant? Because the EIDL grant advance was 10,000 and under, and it is the same as basically the PPP now since it's forgiven. And the EIDL advances for people that did not get a PPP were automatically already forgiven. So it's going to come down to whether or not it was an EIDL loan or an EIDL advance or grant at that time. What I would probably do is you can repay the loan. There is a window where you can repay it, or if, you could also contact the SBA disaster office out of Texas, the reconsiderations and others for any particular advice, and they are there as well. I didn't receive a grant with my EIDL loan. Can I reapply for a new grant? My thinking is yes. My thinking is if you got an EIDL loan without the advance or the grant, that you will be able to apply, but that's going to be in the final rules. And we really don't know yet because initially the EIDL advance was designed to get money out quickly to businesses and business owners that really kind of needed money to keep going and operating before they received their EIDL loan. So we'll have to wait and see. The EIDL, there'll be another round of the EIDL grant. It'll be included. It's included the $20 billion. Again, it's going to be to boost up to $10,000 is what we understand, up to $10,000. So if you received 10,000 already, there probably won't be another round, but if you received less, getting up to that point, you can get to there. Second, PPP expenses include new rules and expenditures. Are those rules and expenses now available to use with the first PPP if you have not applied for forgiveness yet? And that would be probably something you'd really be concerned with if you have a PPP that is larger than 150, because over 150, those rules still apply and there's still the process of going through, although there's the safe harbor with employees and other things. But the answer to that is, from my understanding, yes, you can use those other expenditures that you had for modifications. Let's say, for example, it's a restaurant and you applied a lot of PPE, you maybe threw in some plexiglass, made it safer for employees, for customers, for other things, and some of the other new rules that are another new expenditures that are out there. PPE being one of them, and also other things as well. When is the PPP? Oh, excuse me, just answered that one. So okay. Do I need to apply from my bank for the second round of PPP? That is probably not. That is going to be probably not. You might want to apply because you've already got a loan from them, but we're really expecting more guidance from SBA, but I imagine you'll be able to apply anywhere. Now, will it be easier for maybe the second draw? Potentially, yes, but probably not all lenders are going to go through that particular process. Okay, I received 8,000 from the original EIDL. Do I have to reapply to receive the additional 2,000? There will probably be a process that's identified by SBA on how to do that relatively soon. And we have somebody who submitted to the Barstool Fund last week and are awaiting a response. So we'll have more on the Barstool Fund next week. It's the second round of PPP income reduction required. Limited to 2020 versus 2019 quarters, or could it apply to quarter one 2021? Right now, I think in the legislation that was signed into law, it is pretty much based on 2020 to 2019. And also, it could be extended into 2021, but we'll just have to wait for guidance. My guess is going to be it's only going to be for those 2020 versus 2019 quarters. And also for quarter four, that's still an issue on if quarter four is. I believe it is, but I've seen other things and heard other aspects that it's only for the first 3 quarters. Okay, that's our questions. Thank you so much for attending, and a lot of things going on, a lot of things happening. So thanks again to Jon for joining us today. We'll be back next week. Next week is going to be no guest speaker. Next week is going to be only myself and an hour plus on all of this stuff, with the hopes and feeling that SBA will have some guidance, or there'll be at least some of the details that we need to talk about. So for Jon Schallert, I'm Kelly Bearden. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back next week. We'll be checking out also the destination webinar and seminar. So thank you so much. Take care, everybody. We'll talk to you then. Bye-bye now.